he didn't. He was very much affected by Prabhupada's appearance and his position and everything. You know, he's young and he was trying to keep little distance out of awe and reverence. But Prabhupada, when he inquired about, just by hearing from Mukunda, he came to assist build the temple. What a deep commitment and faith they had. So they all together built. First time he saw Prabhupada while he was came out of the flight. He says that he could see a shining in it. However, later Prabhupada understood that Sam was the one who actually arranged with all these, groups, the mantra rock dance program. So he called him for this, about the book money, the loss and gain, all this stuff. So when he came, Prabhupada asked how much you got. He said 1,500. So you can start bookkeeping now. So now every day he's coming. Prabhupada is teaching the ABCD of bookkeeping. Sam had no much interest, but in order to associate with Prabhupada, he used to come. While coming, he got got opportunity to speak to him and ask many questions. At the same time, Prabhupada asked that you should get married. He should get married. Anyway, so read.
Mukunda and his wife Janaki, whose apartment was just down the hall from Srila Prabhupada's, were the only couple Srila Prabhupada had already initiated and married. Mukunda, who often wore his strand of large red japa beads in two loose loops around his neck, had grown long hair and a short, thick black beard since coming to San Francisco. He had entered the summer of love, spirit of hate Asbury, and was acquainted with many of the popular figures. Although occasionally earning money as a musician, he spent most of his time promoting Prabhupada's mission, especially by meeting people to arrange gala programs like the one at the Avalon. He was a leader in bringing people to assist Prabhupada, yet he had no permanent sense of commitment. He was helping because it was fun, having little desire to be different from his many San Francisco friends. He did not strictly follow Prabhupada's principle for regulated spiritual life. In his exchange with Srila Prabhupada, Mukunda liked to assume a posture of fraternal camaraderie rather than one of menial servitude, and Srila Prabhupada reciprocated. Sometimes, however, Prabhupada would assert himself as the teacher. Once, when Prabhupada walked into Mukunda's apartment, he noticed a poster on the wall showing a matador with a cap and sword going after a bull. This is a horrible picture. Srila Prabhupada exclaimed, his face showing displeasure. Mukunda looked at the poster, realizing for the first time what it meant. Yes, it is horrible, he said, and tore it off the wall. Srila Prabhupada was eager to have someone play the mridang properly during the kirtanas, and Mukunda, a musician, was a likely candidate. Mukunda, the day the drum came, I asked Swamiji if I could learn. And he said yes. I asked him when, and he said, when do you want? Now I asked, he said yes. I was a little surprised to get such a quick appointment, but I brought the drum to his room and he began to show me the basic beat. First there was a ghee tata, ghee tata, ghee tata, and then one slightly more complicated beat, ghee tata, ghee tata, ghee tata, ghee tata.
Look, Syamala Mataji learned now how to play the drum. Good. Everybody remembers? Geetata, Geetata, Geetata. So now here of Mukunda's incident, he got married by Prabhupada's instruction, and he's staying in the apartment down below Prabhupada's apartment. And however, here it shows the personality of Mukunda. He's a leader, he looks like he's a good influencer. Otherwise, how can he make a big temple without knowing anything? People do not know. He's a good influencer, looks like. He could good arrange things. And at the same time, he didn't have that kind of complete submissiveness. Looks like he wanted to treat Prabhupada as a friend. He was just helping him in one sense. Doesn't have a complete deep understanding of or submissiveness. He was helping Prabhupada reciprocated as long as the service is going on. So Prabhupada went to his house, apartment, and he saw that showing a matador with a cape and sword going after bulls. So he said, Prabhupada is not happy to see a devotee having this kind of picture who is killing the bull. Sometimes you don't realize this. You don't have vision. So spiritual master shows the vision, real vision. So as soon as Prabhupada reminded that, he immediately understood, oh, really, this is bad. So at least he accepted and tore it off the wall, from the wall. So then Prabhupada wanted someone to play the mridanga, and Mukunda wanted if he can learn. So Prabhupada said immediately, yes. So this is the situation where he started learning from Prabhupada. Actually, he's a good music player, so he will pick up quickly anyway. So AJ, please go ahead.
As I began to play the beat, I kept speeding it up, and he kept telling me to slow down. He spent a lot of time just showing me how to strike the heads of the drum. Then I finally began to get it a little, but he had to keep admonishing me to slow down and pronounce the syllables as I hit the drum. Ji, ta, ta. The syllables, he said, and the drum should sound the same. I should make it sound like that and always pronounce them. I was determined and played very slowly for a long time. I was concentrating with great intensity. Then suddenly I was aware of Swamiji standing motionless beside me. I didn't know how long he was going to stand there without saying anything, and I became a little uncomfortable. But I continued playing. When I got up the courage to look up and see his face, to my surprise, he was moving his head back and forth in an affirming way with his eyes closed. He seemed to be enjoying the lesson. This came as a complete surprise to me. Although I had taken music lessons before and had spent many years taking piano lessons, I can never remember an instance when the teacher seemed to actually enjoy my playing. I felt very wonderful to see that here was a teacher who was so perfect, who enjoyed what he was teaching so much. Not because it was his personal teachings or his personal method, but because he was witnessing Krishna's energy pass through him to a conditioned soul like myself. And he was getting great pleasure out of it. I had a deeper realization that Swamiji was a real teacher, although I had no idea what a spiritual master really was. To Mukunda's wife, Janaki, Krishna consciousness meant dealing in a personal way with Swamiji. As long as he was around, she was all right. She enjoyed asking him questions, serving him, and learning from him how to cook. She didn't care much for studying the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, but she quickly developed an intense attraction for him. Janaki. There were a group of us sitting around in Swamiji's apartment. I asked him if he had any children. He looked at me as if I had said something strange, and he said, "You are not my child?" I said, "Well, yes." And he said, "Are not all of these my children?" And his answer was so quick that I never doubted that he seriously meant what he said. For several hours each morning, Prabhupada showed Janaki, Joan, and others how to cook. One day in the kitchen, he noticed a kind of berry he had never tasted, and he asked Janaki what they were. She told him strawberries. He immediately popped one into his mouth, saying, "That's very tasty." And then he proceeded to eat another, exclaiming, "Very tasty." Yeah. So it starts off with Prabhupada still teaching Janaki how to play the drums, and he was having trouble because he kept trying to speed up the beat, and but he would just work on it and get there, and finally hit the rhythm, pronouncing the syllables, and he noticed that Prabhupada was actually enjoying the drumming as he did it, and that kind of spoke to how Mukunda viewed him as a teacher, and how he was a real teacher, versus others that he had were just kind of like never enjoyed what they were doing. And then Janaki also was enjoying learning how to cook. She didn't enjoy the philosophy aspect of Krishna consciousness, but she seemed to enjoy Prabhupada's company and serving him. And he was like I said, he was teaching them how to cook, and for the first time. Well, actually, the big one there is right where she asked him if he had any children, and he said, "Hey, aren't you guys are all my children?" And his answer was so direct and absolute that they were like they believed it, right? That they realized that's how he felt. And also that they gave Prabhupada strawberries for the first time, and he proceeded to just keep eating them. So
Strawberry. Yeah, second.
One time Janaki was making whipped cream when Prabhupada came into the kitchen and asked, "What is that?" She replied, "It is whipped cream." "What is whipped cream?" he asked. "It is cream," she replied, "but when you beat it, it fluffs up into a more solid form." Although always adamant about kitchen rules, one of the most important being that no one could eat in the kitchen, Srila Prabhupada immediately dipped his finger into the whipped cream and tasted it. "This is yogurt," he said. In a light-hearted, reprimanding way, that was her pleasure, Janaki replied, "No, Swamiji, it is whipped cream." Srila Prabhupada corrected her, "No, it is yogurt." And again, he put his finger into it and tasted it, saying, "Oh, it tastes very nice." "Swamiji," Janaki accused him, "you are eating in the kitchen." Srila Prabhupada merely smiled and shook his head back and forth, saying, "That is all right." Janaki, one time I told him, "Swamiji, I had the most exciting dream. We were all on a planet of our very own, and everybody from Earth had come there. They had all become pure devotees and they were all chanting. You were sitting on a very special chair high off the ground, and the whole earth was clapping and chanting Hare Krishna." Swamiji smiled and said, "Oh, that's such a lovely dream." Bonnie MacDonald, age 19, and her boyfriend, Gary McElroy, 20, had both come to San Francisco from Austin, where they had been living together as students at the University of Texas. Bonnie was a slight, fair blonde with a sweet southern drawl. She was born and raised in Southeast Texas in a Baptist family. In high school, she had become agnostic. But later, while traveling in Europe and studying the religious art there and the architecture of the great cathedrals, she had concluded that these great artists couldn't have been completely wrong. So here, Janaki is basically making whipped cream in the kitchen, and Prabhupada asked, "What is that?" She said it was whipped cream, and Prabhupada just dipped his finger and tasted it and said, "This is yogurt." Janaki, they went back and forth. Like Janaki said, it is not yogurt, it's whipped cream, and Prabhupada corrected it is yogurt. And Janaki also basically mentioned to Swamiji that he is eating in the kitchen, and Prabhupada smiled and said, "That is all right." And Janaki told Prabhupada of a dream that they had all been on a separate planet, and all the devotees, basically all the people from Earth had become devotees, and they were all chanting. And Prabhupada was sitting in a high chair, which was floating off the ground. And Swamiji replied that it's a nice dream. And then we read about Bonnie, who is age 19 and who had come to San Francisco from Austin, Texas, with her boyfriend Gary. She was actually raised in a Baptist family. She had lost interest in religion, but when she traveled in Europe and studied the religious art and the architectures of the big churches, she basically concluded that those artists are not completely wrong.
Thank you. Nipa?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, read, please.
Gary, the son of U.S. Air officer, had been raised in Germany, Okinawa, and other places around the world before his family had settled in Texas. His dark hair and bushy brows gave him schooling look except when he smiled. He was one of the first students at the University of Texas to wear long hair and experiment with psychedelic drugs. While taking LSD together, he and Bonnie had become obsessed with the idea of going on a spiritual search. And without notifying their parents or school, they had driven to the West Coast in search of someone who could teach us about spiritual life. They had spent a few frustrating months searching through spiritual books and amongst and among spiritual groups in Haight Ashbury, they had become vegetarians. Gary had started teaching himself to play electrical guitar while Bonnie had gone to Golden Gate Park every day to perform a self-styled Hatha Yoga meditation. But gradually they had become disillusioned and had felt themselves becoming degraded from drugs. When the disciple is ready, the guru will appear, they had read, and they had waited eagerly for the day when their guru would come. Although Bonnie had spent most of her time in the parks of San Francisco, one day she had been looking through a table full of magazines in Haight Ashbury head shop where she had found a copy of Back to Godhead, the mimeographed journal produced by Srila Prabhupada's disciples in New York. She had been particularly attracted to the Haigriva's article about Swamiji. The description of Swamiji's smile, his bright eyes, his pointy-toed shoes, and the things he had given her a feeling that this might be the guru she has been looking for. And when she had learned that this same Swamiji had opened an ashrama in Haight Ashbury, she had immediately started searching through the neighborhood until she had found the temple on Frederick Street. Before Bonnie and Gary met Swamiji, they had both been troubled. Gary was in anxiety about the threat of being drafted into the army, and both of them were disillusioned because they had not found the truth they had come to San Francisco to find. So, on meeting Srila Prabhupada in his room, they began to explain their situation. So basically, in these paragraphs, it describes how Gary, who was the son of U.S. Air officer, was raised in Germany and were around the places in the world before the family got to settle in Texas. Describes his hair, dark hair, bushy brows, and scowling look, except when it smiled. And he was also the first among the first student, one of the first students at University of Texas to wear long hair, experiment with psychedelic drugs while taking an LSD. Oh, okay, it's like they had spent like it's a little above like taking together LSD. He and his girlfriend Bonnie had been obsessed of going on spiritual search, and without notifying their parents, they had gone to West Coast in search of one. And they had spent very frustrating months in reading the spiritual books in Haight Ashbury, and they had become vegetarians also. Gary played guitar, and Bonnie he had gone to Golden Park to perform Hatha Yoga meditation, and they were disillusioned and felt themselves becoming degraded from drugs. When the disciple, it's like they had read somewhere that when the disciples are ready, the guru will appear. So Bonnie had spent most of her time in the parks of San Francisco one day, and through one of the magazines, she had found a copy of Back to Godhead, and produced by Srila Prabhupada's disciples in New York, and she was also attracted by Haigriva's article about Swamiji and the description given by about Swamiji over there. And in that, uh, before I mean, when she learned about Swamiji in the ashrama, she immediately started searching in the neighborhood for the temple on the Frederick Street. So when before Gary and Bonnie met Swamiji, they were troubled. Gary had anxiety and was also uh, uh, had the threat of being drafted into the army. And both of them were disillusioned, but they had not found the truth. So on meeting Srila Prabhupada in their room, they explained this situation to the Swamiji.
Nice. There are many people. There are many people really interesting. Even the young, they are looking for spiritual solutions. That's amazing. It's unusual, actually. I find it's unusual, but anyway, they're looking for spiritual solutions. Looks like, and just on time, Prabhupada is there to guide. Sam, Prasanti.
Boni, he, he was sitting in a rocking chair in his little apartment and he looked at us like we were crazy because we were and said, "You come to my classes, simply come to my classes every morning and every evening, and everything will be all right." That sounded to us like an unbelievable panacea, but because we were so bewildered, we agreed to it. I told him I had traveled all over Europe, and he said, "Oh, you have traveled so much." And I said to him, "Yes, I have traveled so much. I have done so many things, but none of it made me happy." He was pleased with with that statement. He, he said, "Yes, that is the problem." He began going to his morning lecture. We began going to his morning lectures. For us, it was a long distance to get there at 7 in the morning, but we did it every morning with the conviction that this was what he had said to do, and we were going to do it. Then one day he asked us, "What do you do?" When we were when we said that formerly we had been art students at college, he told us to paint pictures of Krishna. Shortly after that, we asked to be initiated. Joanne and Roger were soon initiated, receiving the names Yamuna and Guru Dasa, and the very next day they were married. At their wedding ceremony, Swamiji presided wearing a bulky garland of leaves and rhododendron flowers. He sat on a cushion on a temple floor, surrounded by his followers and paraphernalia for the sacrificial fire. Before him was the small mound of earth where he would later build the fire. He explained the meaning of Krishna conscious marriage and how husband and wife should assist one another and serve Krishna, keeping him in the center. Swamiji had commented that he did not like the Western woman's dress and at his request Yamuna was dressed in a sari. So she before so this is Bonnie. He was sitting in the um, I'm sorry.
He means Prabhupada. Bonnie is saying Prabhupada is sitting.
Oh, okay. When Bonnie went to meet Swamiji, he's sitting in the chair and they talked to him. He said, "Come to my classes every morning and evening, and that should and everything will be all right." And it was unbelievable for them. They thought, "How are the classes going to work?" But they traveled because they are living a little bit far. They have to reach by 7 o'clock, but they did it anyway because that's what the guru told them. And after the morning lectures, they shortly after the morning lectures, they asked they asked him if they can get initiated, and they got initiation also. And Swamiji also told them to paint the pictures as they were art students at college. He asked to paint the pictures of Krishna. And after initiation, they got married as well. Um, so the ceremony was described here, how it was done. Swamiji was sitting with all the paraphernalia and the mold of earth in which he is going to build the fire. And also he told them what a Krishna conscious marriage is and how husband and wife should assist to serve Krishna and keep him in the center of the life. And upon Swamiji's comment about the Western dress, upon his request, Yamuna wore sari.
Yes, thank you. Vijayanantu.
Although Swamiji had called for ghee, clarified butter, as one of the sacrificial ingredients The devotees, thinking ghee too costly, had substituted melted margarine. He had called for firewood also, and the devotees had supplied him the bits of broken orange crate. Now, with Yamuna and Gurudasa seated before him on the opposite side of the mound of earth, he picked up a small piece of the splintered orange crate, dipped it into what was supposed to be ghee, and held it in the candle flame to begin the fire. The splinter flamed, sputtered, and went out. He picked up another splinter and moistened it with the melted margarine, but when he touched it to the flame, it became the same sweet sound and spluttered out. After trying unsuccessfully 4 or 5 times, Swamiji looked up and said, "This marriage will have a very slow start." Yamuna began to cry. Bonnie and Gary were initiated just 2 weeks after they had met Swamiji. Bonnie's initiated name was Govinda Dasi and Gary's was Gaura Sundara. Although still dressed in blue jeans even at their initiation and not professing to know much of what was going on, they had confidence in Swamiji. They knew that their minds were still hazy from drugs, but they took their initiation seriously and became strict followers. Gaura Sundara threw out whatever Mariajuna he had, and he and Govinda Dasi began eating only food they had offered to Lord Krishna. 2 weeks after their initiation, Swamiji conducted their marriage ceremony. On the evening of the wedding, Govinda Dasi's father came from Texas. Even though he objected to Krishna consciousness as radically un-American, walking up to Srila Prabhupada's seat in the temple, Govinda Dasi's father asked, "Why do you have to change my daughter's name? Why does she have to have an Indian name?" So this describes the marriage ceremony, where Prabhupada had asked for ghee as well as all the necessary stuffs that is required for the yajna and all the other stuff. But the devotees thought that ghee will be a bit costly, and they had substituted with melted margarine, and also for the fire food, they had substituted with a bit of broken orange crate. And when during the ceremony, like when Yamuna and Gurudasa was sitting before on the side of the mound of earth, Swamiji picked up a small piece of the splitted orange crate and dipped it in the substitute of the ghee, and held it in the flame and in the candle flame, and it began to begin the fire. But the splinter flame sputtered and went out, and he tried 3-4 times, but still he was not successful. Then he made a comment like, "This marriage will have a very slow start," and Yamuna was not happy, and she began to cry. Bonnie and Gary were initiated in just 2 weeks after they met the Swamiji, and they also got the name as Govinda Dasi and Gaura Sundara. Although they were still dressed in blue jeans and the initiation, but they still had confidence in Swamiji, and they know that their mind is still hazy from the drugs, but they took the initiation seriously and become strict followers by throwing all the drugs they had, and they began to eat food only offered to Krishna. And 2 weeks after initiation, Swamiji conducted their marriage ceremony. On the evening of the marriage ceremony, Govinda Das's father, he came from Texas, and he objected to the Krishna consciousness as he was he was saying it is radically un-American, and he went to Srila Prabhupada and asked in the temple and asked, "Why are you changing my daughter's name? Why she should have an Indian name?"
Yes. Govinda Das is going to be the personal secretary of Prabhupada eventually. That's very good role. This nice question, and okay, I think I'm going to read. So, Gaurang, come. Gaurang Das is going to read.
Rupa looked at him and then, with a mischievous gleam, looked at Mr. Patel an Indian guest standing nearby with his family. You don't like Indians? He asked. Everyone who heard Swamiji laughed, except for Govinda Das, his father, who replied, well, yeah, they're all right, but why does Bani have to have a different name? Because she has asked me to give her one, Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada replied. If you love her, you will like what she likes. Your daughter is happy. Why do you object? The discussion ended there. Govinda Dasi's father remained civil. Later, he enjoyed taking prasadam with his daughter and son-in-law, Govinda Dasi. Gorsundara and I set about reading the 3 volumes of Swamiji's Srimad Bhagavatam. At the same time, Swamiji had told me to paint a large canvas of Radha and Krishna and a cow. So every day for the whole day, I would paint, and Gorsundara would read out loud from the Srimad Bhagavatam, one volume after another. We did this continuously for 2 months. During this time, Swamiji also asked me to do a portrait of him standing before a background, painting on Lord Chaitanya dancing. Swamiji wanted to so that Lord Chaitanya's foot would be touching his head. I tried. It was a pretty horrible painting, and yet he was happy with it.
Hmm.
So Srila Prabhupada looked at Mr. Patel and asked him if you don't like Indians, he asked, and everyone started laughing, except for Govinda Das's father, who replied saying that, well, yeah, they're all right. But he is asking, why does Vani have to have a different name? And Srila Prabhupada replied saying that she has asked him to give her one, and if you love her, then you will like what she does. And he continues saying, if your daughter is happy, why do you object? So the discussion ended there, and Govinda Das's father later enjoyed taking prasadam and with his daughter and son-in-law. Govinda Das recalls saying that her and Gaurasundara decided to start reading the 3 volumes of Srila Prabhupada Srimad Bhagavatam. And so at the same time, Prabhupada had asked her to make a large canvas of Radha Krishna and a portrait of him standing before painting on Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so Gaurasundara Prabhu would read out loud from the Srimad Bhagavatam while she would paint.
Nice. Prabhupada engaged everyone very expertly. How we'll see. Prabhupada's thoughtful followers felt that some of the candidates for initiation did not intend to fulfill the exclusive lifelong commitment a disciple owes to his guru. Swamiji, they would say, some of these people come only for the initiation. We have never seen them before, and we never see them again. Srila Prabhupada replied that that was the risk he had to take. One day in a lecture in the temple, he explained that although the reactions for a disciple's past sins are removed at initiation, the spiritual master remains responsible until the disciple is delivered from the material world. Therefore, he said, Lord Chaitanya warned that a guru should not accept many disciples. One night in the temple during the question and answer session, a big bearded fellow raised his hand and asked Prabhupada, can I become initiated? The brash public request annoyed some of the Prabhupada's followers, but Prabhupada was serene. Yes, he replied, but first you must answer 2 questions. Who is Krishna? The boy thought for a moment and said, Krishna is God. Nice, listen how easy it was. Yes, Prabhupada replied, and who are you? Again, the boy thought for a few moments and then replied, I am the servant of God. Very good. Prabhupada said, yes, you can be initiated tomorrow. Huh? That's Prabhupada, the basic, that's a big thing actually. You recognize Krishna and you accept your position as servant of God, then you're qualified in one sense, very simple. Srila Prabhupada knew that it would be difficult for his Western disciples to stick to Krishna consciousness and attain the goal of pure devotional service. All their life they had the worst of training. And that despite their nominal Christianity and philosophical searching, most of them knew nothing of the science of God. They did not even know that illicit sex and meat eating were wrong. Although when he told them, they accepted what he said and they freely chanted Hare Krishna. So how could he refuse them? Of course, whether they would be able to persevere in Krishna consciousness despite the ever-present attractions of Maya would be seen in time. Some would fall, that was the human tendency, but some would not. At least those who sincerely follow his instructions to chant Hare Krishna and avoid sinful activities would be successful. He gave the example that a person could say that today's fresh food is not properly used, would spoil in a few days. But if it is a fresh now, to say that in future it will be misused and therefore spoil is unless it's only a surmise. Yes, in the future, anyone could fall down, but Prabhupada took it as his responsibility to engage his disciples now, and he was giving them the methods which he followed would protect them from ever falling down. This is the magnanimity mode of Prabhupada, is how his situation that he noticed that disciples noticed that some of the people are just coming, they think that initiation I need to take, and Prabhupada understood that it's a risk, and as this initiation, spiritual master takes the sinful activities during the initiation, and the spiritual master, what it does is remains responsible until the disciples delivered from the material world, birth after birth. It's very so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed not to accept many disciples, but it's one's causeless mercy of a spiritual master, compassion. So somebody asked, can I be initiated? And the people didn't know, devotees didn't know. They were kind of a little embarrassed why he's asking. But Prabhupada said, yes, without hesitation, you can. Even though he's new, same day. And he asked, who is Krishna? So he could answer, Krishna is God. Who are you? I'm the servant of God. Very simple. You qualified and you will initiate it tomorrow. For us now, years we take now. So now Prabhupada says he understood that it's very difficult for the Western disciples to stick to certain principles. They'll be difficult for them, pure devotional service and all this thing. But he is taking as a chance. If you do not give, how they will give the opportunity, how will they will change. It's a big risk he's taking on himself, actually. But his understanding is, okay, at least some will take sincerely and some will not. Some may not, right? So tomorrow they may fall down, because tomorrow they will fall down, why should I wait? I should give them based on today. So yes, in the future, anyone could fall down, but Prabhupada took it as his responsibility to engage his disciples now. And he was giving the methods which, if followed, could protect them from ever falling down. That's a very, very magnanimity of giving initiation in the Parampara. AJ?
Aside from Vedic standards, even the standard of Swamiji's New York disciples, the devotees in even by the standard of Swamiji's New York disciples, the devotees in San Francisco were not very strict. Some continued going to the donut shop, eating food without offering it to Krishna, and eating forbidden things like chocolate and commercial ice cream. Some even indulged in after kirtan cigarette breaks right outside the temple door. Some got initiated without knowing precisely what they had agreed to practice. Kirtanandana. The mood in San Francisco was a lot more relaxed. The devotees liked to go to the corner and have their coffee and donuts, but Prabhupada loved the way so many people were coming, and he loved the program at the Avalon Ballroom. But there were two sides: those who strictly followed the rules and regulations and emphasized purity, and then those who were not so concerned about strictness, but who wanted to spread Krishna consciousness as widely as possible. Swamiji was so great that he embraced both groups. Michael Wright, 21, had recently gotten out of the Marine Corps, and Nancy Grindle, 18, was fresh out of high school. They had met in college in Los Angeles. Feeling frustrated and in need of something tangible to which to dedicate their lives, they had come to San Francisco to join the hippies. But they soon realized that they and the Haight-Ashbury hippies, whom they found dirty, aimless, unproductive, and lost in their search for identity, had little in common. So Nancy took a job as a secretary for a telephone company, and Michael found work as a lineman for the electric company. Then they heard about Swami in Haight-Ashbury and decided to visit the temple. It was an evening kirtan, and the irrepressible hippies were twirling, twisting, and wiggling. Michael and Nancy took a seat on the floor off to one side, impressed more by the presence of the Swami than by the kirtan. After the kirtan, Prabhupada lectured, but they found his accent heavy. They wanted to understand. They had an innate feeling that he was saying something valuable, and yet the secret seemed locked behind a thick accent and within a book written in another language. They decided to come back in the morning and try again. So they're talking about, so you had the East Coast guys who were very strict in following the regulations and the rules, and the West Coast guys, the San Francisco guys who were the opposite. They were still smoking, drinking coffee, eating chocolate, doing things that go against the regulative principles, and and some of them were initiated but weren't really even sure what they had agreed to when they were initiated. And as Kirtananda says, he's like, hey, everything was just a lot more relaxed. But Prabhupada was happy with the number of people that they were reaching and how many people were coming to the programs. And so he's kind of, they had the rules and regulations guys, and then they had the guys that were, more concerned about spreading Krishna consciousness to as many people as they can. So they, while they weren't perfect, they were serving a purpose. And then it talks about, two folks who went to visit Prabhupada for the first time, Michael and Nancy, who, went out to San Francisco to become hippies, but found it wasn't really for them. So they took regular jobs and ended up going to visit Prabhupada and realized something good was happening, but they were having trouble understanding him, but it hooked them enough that they wanted to come back and find out more. So.
Thank you. It's interesting, isn't it? He says, what he says? After Kirtan cigarette break. What was the situation those days? Yeah, he was so flexible. Second, Prabhu?
It was an evening kirtan, and
I think that's what read.
so at the morning program, they found a smaller group, a dozen devotees with beads for chanting draped around their necks, a few street people. The kirtana seemed sweeter and more mellow, and Michael and Nancy chanted and danced along with the devotees. Then Prabhupada spoke, and this time they caught a few of his ideas. They stayed for breakfast and became friends with Mukunda and Janaki, Sam and Marjorie, now Syamasundara and Malati, Yamuna and Gurudasa, and Govinda Dasi and Gaurasundara. They liked the devotees and promised to come again that evening. Soon they were regularly attending the morning and evening programs, and Nancy, along with the other women, was attending Prabhupada's weekend cooking classes. Michael was open to Prabhupada's ideas, but he had difficulty accepting the necessity of surrendering to a spiritual authority. His tendency was to reject authorities, but the more he thought about it, the more he saw that Prabhupada was right. He had to accept an authority. He reasoned, every time I stop at a red light, I am accepting an authority. And finally, he concluded that to progress in spiritual understanding, he would have to accept a spiritual authority. Yet, because he didn't want to accept it, he was in a dilemma. Finally, after hearing Prabhupada's lectures for 2 weeks, Michael decided to surrender to Prabhupada's authority and try to become Krishna conscious. Michael, Nancy and I decided to get married and become Swamiji's disciples and member of his society. We told some of the devotees we would like to see Swamiji. They said, yes, just go up, he's on the 3rd floor. We were a little surprised that there were no formalities required, and when we got to the door, his servant Ranchor let us in. We went in with our shoes on, so Ranchor had to ask us to take them off. I didn't know exactly what to say to Swamiji. I was depending on my future wife to make the initial opening. But then I finally said, we came because we would like to become members of your Krishna conscious society. He said this was very nice. Then I said that actually the main reason we were there was that we want to be married. We knew that he performed marriage ceremonies and that it was part of the society's requirements that couples had to be duly married before they could live together. Swamiji asked if I liked the philosophy and if I had a job. My answer to both questions was yes. He explained that first of all, we would have to be initiated and then we could be married the next month. So here, basically, Michael and Nancy, they came to the morning program. They were less devotees, and they basically they participated in the kirtan and danced. And now, when Prabhupada gave his lecture, they were able to understand some of his lecture. And then they met the other devotees, Mukunda and Janaki, Syamasundar and Malati, and they became friends. And they started to attend the evening programs. And Nancy also attended the cooking classes in the weekend. So Michael liked Prabhupada's ideas, but he did not like accepting or surrendering to a spiritual master. So his nature was to reject authorities. So, and the more he thought, he felt that what that Prabhupada was right. And he gives an example that every time we stop at a red light, he's accepting an authority. So he, even though he was in a dilemma, but after hearing Prabhupada's lectures for a few weeks, he decided to surrender to Prabhupada. And then they both want to get married. So they asked one of the disciples that they would like to see Swamiji. They just said he's up on the third floor in his apartment. You can go meet him. They were surprised that there was no formalities and it was so easy to meet them. So they went to the Swamiji's apartments, and first he said that they want to become members of ISKCON. But the main reason, he also mentions that that they wanted to be married. So, and Prabhupada asked them that if he liked the philosophy and if he had a job. And he also explained that they would first have to be initiated before they can get married.
Thank you. Nipa? Nipa, you're there? Okay. Prasanthi?
At their initiation, Michael received the name Dayananda and Nancy received the name Nandarani. Soon Prabhupada performed their marriage, Nandarani. We knew it would be a very big wedding in Hyde Ashbury. Whenever Swamiji would perform a wedding, hundreds of people would come and the temple would be filled. My parents were coming and Dayanand's parents were also coming. Swamiji said that it was proper that I cook. He said I should come to his apartment on the morning of the wedding and he would help me cook something for the wedding feast. So that morning, I put on my best jeans and my best sweatshirt and my boots, and I went off to Swamiji's apartment. When I got upstairs, I walked in with my boots on. Swamiji was sitting there in his rocking chair. He smiled at me and said, "Oh, you have come to cook." I said, "Yes." He sat there and looked at me. One of those long, silent stares. He said, "Take off the boots." After I took off my boots and my old leather jacket, Swamiji got up and went into the kitchen. He got a very large pot that had been burned so thick on the bottom that practically there was no metal visible. He handed it to me and said, "We want to boil milk in this pot. It has to be washed." There wasn't a sink in the Swamiji's kitchen, only a teeny round basin. So I went into the bathroom, put the pot in the bathtub, and rinsed it out. I assumed Swamiji didn't want the black off the bottom because it was burned on. So I brought it back to him and said, "Oh, that is very clean. But just take off this little black on the bottom here." I said, "Okay," and got a knife and crawled into the bathtub and started scrubbing the black off. I worked and worked and worked, and I scrubbed and scrubbed. I had cleanser up to my eyebrows. Sorry, I had a cleanser up to my elbows and made a mess everywhere. I had gotten about half the black off. The rest seemed to be more or less an integral part of the bottom. So I took the pot back to Swamiji and said, "This is the best I can do. All of this is burned on," he said. "Yes, yes, you have done a wonderful job. Now just take off this black that's left." So I went back into the bathtub and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed. It was almost midday when I came out of the bathtub with all the black scrubbed off the bottom of that pot. He was so happy when I brought the pot in. It was sparkling. A big smile came on his face, and he said, "Oh, this is perfect." I was exhausted. Then Swamiji welcomed me into his kitchen and taught me how to make rasgullas. We boiled the milk, curdled it, and then I sat down and began rolling the curd into balls on a tray. As I rolled the balls, I would put them in a little row along the tray, and every single ball had to be exactly the same size. Swamiji would take his and first thumb and first and second fingers and shoot the ball out of the row when they weren't the right size. And I would have to remake them until they were the right size. This went on until I had a full tray of balls, all the same size. So Michael and Nancy got initiated. Michael got the name Dayananda and Nancy Nandarani. And Prabhupada scheduled their marriage. So Nandarani was saying that it was a very big, she knew that it is going to be a big wedding. And every time there was a wedding, hundreds of people would come. And her parents and the boy's parents both were coming. Swamiji told her to come for cooking. So she went with the best jeans, best sweatshirt, and with boots. Taking a look at her, Swamiji asked her to take off the boots, and then both went into the kitchen. He got her a large pot which was completely burned in the bottom and asked her to clean it. She went into the bathtub because the basin was very small. She went into the bathtub and then started scrubbing, and she did a lot of work on it. And then she showed Swamiji. He said that there is some more black, so let it. Why don't you scrub? And then she went back into the bathroom and scrubbed again. It was almost afternoon. She worked on it a lot, and finally she showed it to Swamiji, and a big smile came on Swamiji's face. He was happy that it was cleaned nicely, and she was exhausted. And then Swamiji asked her to make rasgullas. They boiled the milk, curdled it, and she started to make balls. And whenever something was not in the right size, Swamiji would tell her to redo it. And finally, she made a full tray of balls, all of the same size.
Nice. We all learned what Prabhupada was expecting, right? Patience and clean. Thank you. Vijayanand Prabhu?
Then Swamiji showed me how to boil the balls of curd in sugar water. Malati, Janaki, and I were cooking in the kitchen, and Swamiji was singing. At one point, Swamiji stopped singing and asked me, "Do you know what your name means?" I could not even remember what my name was. He had told me at initiation, but because none of us used our devotee names, I could not remember what mine was. I said, "No, Swamiji, what does my name mean?" He said, "It means you are the mother of Krishna." And he laughed loudly and went back to stirring the rasagullas. I could not understand who Krishna was, who in the world his mother would be, or how I was in any way related to her. But I was satisfied that Swamiji felt that I was somebody worth being. I finished cooking that afternoon about 4 o'clock, and then I went home to get dressed for the wedding. Although I had never worn anything but old dresses and jeans, Swamiji had suggested to the other ladies that they find a way to put me into a sari for the wedding. So we bought a piece of silk to use for a sari. I went to Malati's house. She was going to try to help me put it on. I could not keep it on, so she had to sew it on me. Then they decorated me with flowers and took me to Swamiji and showed him. He was very happy. He said, "This is the way our women should always look. No more jeans and dresses. They should always wear saris." Actually, I looked a fright. I kept stumbling, and they had to sew the cloth on me. But Swamiji thought it was wonderful. The cloth was all one color. So Swamiji said, "Next time you should buy cloth that has a little border on the bottom, so it's two colors. I like two colors better." When we went downstairs to the wedding, Swamiji met my relatives. He spoke to them very politely. My mother cried a lot during the ceremony. I was satisfied that she has been blessed by meeting Swamiji. So, like after the curd balls were made, so it was so Swamiji showed them like how to boil it in the sugar water, and Malati and Janaki were cooking in the kitchen, and Swamiji was singing. And at one point, Swamiji stopped and asked her like, "Do you know what your name means?" But she could not remember her name because like it was something she could not remember, and she told like she could not remember, and she was also not sure what is the meaning of that. And Swamiji mentioned that that means you are the mother of Krishna, and he laughed loudly, and he went back to the rasagula preparation, and uh, and she felt that she did not understand who is Krishna, and like who will be his mother, and how she was related to her. But she was happy for the point, like it made Swamiji felt that like she was somebody worth being. And she finished the cooking in the afternoon 4 o'clock, and she went home for getting dressed for the wedding. Although she did not she did not wear any other dress except jeans and other her old dress. But Swamiji had suggested to the other ladies to try to find a way to put a sari for the wedding. And she bought a piece of silk for the sari. So she went to Malati's house, and she helped to get dressed in sari. And so they could not keep it on, so they sewed it and decorated with flowers, and took to the Swamiji and showed them. So Swamiji was very happy to see her in that dress and sari, and Swamiji mentioned that this is how the our woman should look, and they should not wear jeans and all. And so also, Swamiji made a comment that the sari was made of a single color, and he suggested maybe next time we should look for a double color which has a border. That will he likes that better. And like they went downstairs, and Swamiji met her relatives, and Swamiji spoke to the relatives in a polite manner, and her mother was crying actually during the ceremony, but she felt satisfied that her mother has been blessed by meeting Swamiji.
Nice. Thank you so much. It's wonderful. One more person maybe who can read. Nipa? I hope everybody read twice except Nipa. Nipa, you there? Okay. Maybe AJ, maybe you can finish. You're a fast reader.
So Steve Bowler, age 20, born and raised in New York, and now living the hippie life in San Francisco, had read in the Oracle about Swami Bhaktivedanta coming to San Francisco. The idea of meeting an Indian Swami had interested him, and responding to a notice that he had seen posted on Haight Street, he had gone along with Carolyn Gold, the woman he was living with, to the airport to meet Swami Bhaktivedanta. He and Carolyn had both gotten a blissful life by chanting Hare Krishna and seeing Prabhupada, and they began regularly attending the lectures and kirtans at the temple. Steve decided he wanted to become like the Swami, so he and Carolyn went together to see Prabhupada and request initiation. Speaking privately with Prabhupada in his room, they discussed obedience to the spiritual master and becoming vegetarian. When Prabhupada told them that they should either stop living together or get married, they said they would like to get married, and an initiation date was set. Prabhupada asked Steve to shave his long hair and beard. "Why do you want me to shave my head?" Steve protested. "Krishna had long hair, Rama had long hair, Lord Chaitanya had long hair, and Christ had long hair. Why should I shave my head?"
Let's finish the answer. Yeah.
Okay. Prabhupada smiled and replied, "Because now you are following me." Because now you are following me.
Right.
Right on the wall of Saradasa, a Vaishnava. "You should shave your head like that," Prabhupada said, pointing to Saradasa. "I don't think I'm ready to do that yet." "All right, you're still a young man. There is still time. But at least you should shave your face clean and cut your hair like a man." On the morning of initiation, Steve shaved off his beard and cut his hair around his ears so that it was short in front but long in the back. "How's this?" he asked. "You should cut the back also," Prabhupada replied. Steve agreed. To Steve, Prabhupada gave the name of Subala, and to Carolyn the name Krishna Devi. A few days later, he performed their wedding. So yeah, these two had read about, they were from New York but living in San Francisco, and they read about Prabhupada coming to town, and they went and greeted him at the airport and started attending services at the temple and lectures and kirtans at the temple, and decided, while they enjoy that, they wanted to take it a step further and become initiated. So Prabhupada said, "Hey, you got to become a vegetarian. Also, you guys can't live together. If you either got to get married or stop living together." So they decided to get married. And then he also told him he needs to cut his hair and shave his beard, shave his head, he said. And Steve said, "No way, not doing it, not quite there yet." It's a funny hill to die on, to say like I'll get married, I'll become a vegetarian, I'll serve you, but I'm not shaving. So he said, yeah, he's not ready to do it yet. And so Prabhupada said, "Okay, well, at least, shave your face and cut your hair like a man." And, so Steve did that, but kind of just gave himself a little mullet, as we call it. And then Prabhupada said, "You got to trim the back too." So they did, and they both were then initiated. And after that, Prabhupada did their wedding performed their wedding a few days later.
Interesting. He was so shocked. Krishna has, Rama has, Jesus has, everybody has, Chaitanya has, only you want me to take it out. Thank you so much. I think we had a great reading. It's 8:44. We'll continue tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prabhupada lilamrita ki jai. Thank you so much.
Krishna.